you could control spontaneous intuition, how would that change your career, relationships, finances?
If that's a true skill, that's powerful.
I got trained in this technique developed through the U.S. military. This technique opens you up to increasing intuitive abilities.
We don't understand the power with our minds if we know how to control it.
Intuition is a huge game changer and will get you head and shoulders above your competition when you're able to access your intuition on demand.
That's a powerful statement.
It's a wonderful technique called...
Lori, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me, Curtis. I am still flying high from the conversation you and I had last week. It totally blew my mind how well we connected. It was just quite amazing.
It is. It's interesting that, I talk to people all the time, and every once in a while, and it feels so good. You can just feel it's natural where you meet someone and like, wow, they speak your language and they understand you. And then also some of the stuff that's in my head, I can't really share with everybody because they might not they might think I'm like kind of crazy. But with you, I can be totally crazy with you, Lori, and be okay with it,
Yeah, that goes both ways. Yes, it's so true. And some of the things we talked about were pretty far out there, but we both totally got it. And I hope that your listeners will also really pick up on some of the things that are going on where we realize that reality isn't always what we think it is.
Yeah. Basically, it's all about our perception, number one, and then our model of the world, number two. And then when we can tap into this deep intuition, that's when our world really expands. But before we get into that, before we go too far, Lori, I want you to share with them about your journey. All of us have this journey that we've gone on and on right now. So kind of share with the audience a little bit about who you are and how did you get to be the CEO and founder of Intuitive. Intuitive Specialist.
Good job. Yeah, well,
I got it.
I am a 67-year-old grandma, great-grandma, mother of 9 adult children.
Wow.
And yeah, it took us a while to figure out what was causing it. But anyway, so I'm married to a wonderful retired forensic scientist named Jim.
Wow.
And he's my other half. But my journey has been a long and actually pretty arduous one. I was the child of an alcoholic father and a mother who eventually became alcoholic, but had bipolar disorder and severe ADHD. Wow. And yet those two parents really did the best they could. And I'm the youngest of 3 girls. And, like all of us, everybody's just trying to get through life and do the best they can. And I know they loved us and they did their best. When I was 14, I met the Children of God, which was a cult that was getting going in 1971 in August when I met them. I only been 14 for a few weeks. And you know how you don't really realize how young 14 is till you get older. But when you're 14, you feel pretty grown up. And so I met these folks, and I think my upbringing had kind of primed me to be pretty susceptible to get sucked into a cult because of, looking for a way to save the world and all that sort of thing, So yeah, I did have a really deep spiritual experience though. And I gained a lot of life skills from 20 years in that organization, traveling all over the world. I became fluent in Spanish. I met all sorts of different types of people, and it really helped shape my personality in the sense that, being able to talk to anybody and get along with anybody. Right. And of course, it came with its own dose of trauma as well. And then when I left the Children of God, I was 34 years old. I called a wrong number and got a fabulous job working for the state of Texas as a social worker. And I went from being a social worker with the state of Texas to eventually being the director of a refugee resettlement program where I wrote millions of dollars worth of grants, and I had, a big staff of, I don't know how many people. I think at one point I had 17 staff members and worked with people all over the world, refugees from all over the world. And it was a
Right.
richly rewarding experience for 10 years.
Bespoke Human Potential Coaching sponsors this show. Bespoke helps CEOs, founders, and entrepreneurs get rid of those blind spots that they've been carrying around since childhood. So if you're stuck and have some blocks, click the link below for your clarity call or scan the QR code if you're on video. Let's get rid of those blinds. Now back to the interview.
But at the same time that I was doing that job, I had had the good fortune of the same month that I started this job, I had the great fortune of meeting a man who had been a trainer in a top secret military program. And it was a psychic
Right.
spying program that went under a bunch of different code names, but I think the most well-known name is Stargate, the Stargate program. And if any of you have ever seen the movie Men Who Stare at Goats with George Clooney,
Yeah. Yeah. I saw that. I
yeah,
did.
that
Yeah.
all those characters are people I know, just about all of them,
Wow.
and these were based on real people. It was a caricature of real people,
Right.
and it was
Right.
taken from a very serious journalistic book called Men Who Stare at Goats. But I think the author's name was John Ronson, but George Clooney, I guess he read the book and thought it would make a great parody. So so
Right.
he made a movie out of it, a comedy. And I probably laughed louder than anybody in the theater because I know most of those people. But I had the great fortune of meeting Mr. Lynn Buchanan, who was a trainer in the unit and just a wonderful man. He and I have been friends now going on 30 years. He took me under his wing, and he and his wife became like second parents to me. I was in my 30s at the time. They were in their mid 50s.
Right.
And I got trained in this technique, which is essentially a written technique where you are separating imagination from true psychic perceptions.
Mm.
And so it's really a wonderful technique because when you think about it, we all have spontaneous weird things that happen to us, like where the phone rings and you automatically know who's calling, or
Yes.
you think
Yes.
of someone you haven't thought of in years and they suddenly reach out to you,
They
etc.
call.
Those
Yeah.
kinds of things, it shows that we're all connected on some level. And so I was fascinated by all of this and I dove in head first. I really went under rigorous training because my vision from the very beginning was that I wanted to teach this someday. I knew it was the answer to many of the experiences that I had had throughout my life that I didn't have really an explanation for. When I was a kid, I just would know things. My mother would be on the phone and I could hear the other person's conversation in my head. I could only hear her side of it with my audible ears, but in my head, I
Right.
could
Right. Right.
literally hear the other person's what the other person was saying. I would have dreams of angels coming and taking me out of my body and flying me to classrooms. Just so many
Wow.
things as I was growing up that I didn't have an explanation for. I've also had a phenomenon my whole life of objects moving around me without anyone touching them. And one day when my husband and we'd been married, I don't know, 15 years or so, and we were watching something, we were watching a Friday night movie or something, and this chair just lifted up in front of us, this chair in the room just kind of lifted up on two legs and went gently back down. And he looked at me and he said, "Did you see that?" And I said, "I did see that." he said, he said, he goes, "Okay." And we continued watching whatever it was. And then later I said, "Has this kind of stuff happened to you your whole life?" And he said, "Not till I married you."
But it's interesting though, Laura. It's interesting that because when you think about it though, I mean, we all have these experiences, but we don't have the mental bandwidth to actually accept it.
Yes. Yes. I think that.
Because of the fact that we've been conditioned over the years when things happen like that, that's just a coincidence, or you were just dreaming, or you were this, or you were that. So how do you kind of hone that in, though? I mean, if that's a true skill, I mean, that's powerful because a lot that happens a
It
lot.
does. And one of the things I like to think about is when I'm talking to someone who has had a few of those things happen, or even to those who haven't, if you say, well, if you could control spontaneous intuition, if you could control it, how would that change your career? How would that change your relationships? How would that change your finances?
Right.
To just think about that. And people would be like, Oh, that would really change things. So I became so excited about learning a technique that was used for 20 years to supplement military intelligence. It was developed through the auspices of Stanford Research Institute. Two men heading up the program were physicists who helped to pioneer the laser. So these weren't just layabouts. And
Right. Right.
yeah,
These are heavy duty guys who knew what
these
they
were
were
heavy duty
doing.
guys, and they actually, spending 20 years with the research that they did, they actually came up with more solid proof that telepathy, ESP, and that sort of thing exists than the FDA has, proving that aspirin is effective as a pain reliever.
Wow. So, but hold your thought there. Hold your thought. Now that's a powerful statement. Bespoke Human Potential Coaching sponsors this show. Bespoke helps CEOs, founders, and entrepreneurs get rid of those blind spots that they've been carrying around since childhood. So if you're stuck and have some blocks, click the link below for your clarity call or scan the QR code if you're on video. Let's get rid of those blind spots. Now back to the interview. Because of the fact that once again most of us are not privy to that type of information, and we don't understand the power we have with our minds if we know how to actually control it and actually harness that power.
Exactly. I think most people have heard that we only use 10% of our brains.
Right,
Uh,
right, that's
you
right.
know, but this technique really opens you up to utilize more of your brain, is what it really does. It's really based on brain science, because the left brain is our analytical side, the logic
Right.
side, and the right brain is the artistic, intuitive side. So what this is it's a written structure that allows the left brain to have a role because it can be very analytical, but it also allows the right brain to have a voice and to
Hmm.
be able to access and develop the right brain. And so it's a wonderful technique called controlled remote viewing. And
Right.
we have used it in so many ways, along the way. But your original question in telling my story to get to the part where I became the CEO of this company was that so I was a woman in a male dominated a male dominated world, really, because this was
Right.
developed through the US military, and most of the people that came out of the thing when it was declassified were all men. And so here I am, this little girl, hello, this is super cool. I want to
Right.
learn it. And
Right.
so I'm learning it, but I couldn't get much respect from the men. And, initially they were just kind of like, she's never in the military and she's a woman, was kind of the
Right.
way that I at least interpreted how they were feeling about me, whether that was true or not, maybe something else. But that's how I kind of perceived it at the time. And
Right.
and at one point I realized I can't remember, it was like a turning point for me was I ended up going to a workshop in 2015. So I had been teaching this since 2000. So I've been teaching it now for
Okay.
25 years. But in 2015, I started really feeling like I was seeing the handwriting on the wall that a big change needed to happen. I felt like things were changing, that I needed to, instead of just teaching, kind of eking along, word of mouth,
Right.
teaching, three people here, two people there, once a month. That if I would either needed to retire and go back to a regular job,
Okay. Right.
or I needed to go bigger. And going bigger was really scary. It's
Right.
kind of like you're hiding in the foxhole, and the minute you stand up is when they're going to start shooting at you. So
Right.
it was really scary. And I had heard of there was a coach, a marketing coach, and I thought, well, if I really want to see if I can reach more people, I really need to learn something about marketing. And I think
Right.
I even quoted to you when we were talking that there's a poem that Lynn used to say to me: "He who hath a thing to sell and goes and whispers in a well is not as apt to win the dollar as he who climbs a tree and hollers." And so, and so, and it really for me wasn't about money at all. We could have lived comfortably on what my husband was making, but I just felt like I had to share this. It was just too important to not share it. but I didn't know how can, it doesn't matter if you have the greatest widget in the world. If nobody knows you
Absolutely.
have it,
Yeah.
they're not going to be
Right.
beating a path to your
Absolutely.
door, right? So I was like,
Correct.
okay, I have to do something. So I started studying marketing, and I also started learning how I could teach online. Those were two things I felt like I had to start doing. And I had
Right.
actually started my company in 1999, but in 2004, I made it an LLC. But I was really kind of just piddling in puddles, and I wasn't really concerted about making the company anything. It was more just to have a way to file my taxes.
Right.
So,
Right.
so then in 2015, when I went to this one conference in San Diego, and the guy who was leading the conference, it was a 5-day thing, and each day he had us practice, learn and practice and come up with, like first your ABC sentence, like I do A for B,
Right.
so that's C. And then
Right.
or maybe sometimes people call that the XYZ sentence. But anyway, it's kind of where you can say in a nutshell who you are, what you do,
Right.
and who you do for.
Your little elevator
Yeah, your little
pitch.
elevator pitch. So you had to say that. So once he would teach us one thing, then he would have us try it out on 5 people we didn't know with a timer
Right.
going, so that we only had like a minute to say it. And it was challenging for me because I'm thinking controlled remote viewing, it's like such an abstract thing. And I'm going to try to put this into a 1 minute elevator speech. And then the next day he had us learn something else, and okay, now connect it to your life, and then connect it to them and ask them this. And by the fifth day, we had 5 minutes to do the whole everything and pitch
Right.
a product. It didn't matter if it was a real product or an imaginary product. My imaginary product was a set of DVDs that taught my course, and which they didn't
Okay.
exist yet. But I thought, okay, I'll have this set of DVDs and I'll sell it for $697 or whatever it was. And I did my spiel to a group of people I had never met in my life, and literally at the end of my 5 minutes, people were pulling out their wallets. I mean, they were like, do you really have this? Because we want to buy it right now.
We want it,
Yeah,
huh?
and what shocked me was that these are hundreds of people who were there to learn marketing. These were not woo-woo folks who were coming to learn to be, Madame Minerva in the gypsy tent. These were people
Right.
who
Right.
really
Right. Right.
wanted to learn marketing. So I felt like Henry Ford, who said if I had asked them what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse, because the
Right.
idea of a car, and a motorized vehicle never occurred to anyone. So I thought, wow, this is the motorized vehicle for entrepreneurs, really, and for people who, for professionals. This is something so important. And so I realized that was like my huge aha moment. Like I have been swimming in the wrong pool because.
Yeah, but think about it though. I mean, it's kind of if you think about it for a second, is that you're still talking about something high level. I mean, something you're talking about being intuitive, and you're talking about that still for a lot of people is kind of a woo woo type subject. So, what was it about the way you said that that even without the product, they want to pull out their wallets and want to buy it? You
Yeah,
think?
I think that the difference was it wasn't like coming up to people and saying, "Hey, would you like to be a psychic?" It's like
Right,
it was
right, 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 right.
instead it was that, "Hi, I help entrepreneurs and professionals in to I can't remember, I don't even remember my XYZ statement anymore. It was like but I was started out by explaining that I help these entrepreneurs to be able to really change their lives and improve their businesses through
Right.
increasing their intuitive abilities, and from a program that was developed by physicists at Stanford using the science of the left and right sides of the brain,
Right,
and that it
right,
was used by U.S. military for 20 years. That actually gives it a lot of credibility that the U.S. military used it as
right.
military intelligence for a number of years. But anyway, so I haven't said my 5 minute spiel in a while. Obviously, I should have practiced it before I got on with you. But
No, hey, but basically, you're still here, and you've given so far so much great information as far as how you got to where you are now,
yeah,
and how you've moved and grown since then. So kind of fast forwarding a little bit now, what is it that you feel that are three things that you think that the audience can take away from all the learnings that you've gotten up to this point?
well, I think that of course there's things that you have to learn when you're first starting out, which is get help. right away. Get
Right,
people
right,
who
right.
are strong in areas that you're weak, because and even talking to some of the most successful people who've now become my friends. A lot of my mentors are now my dear friends, and they're
Mhm.
multimillionaires. And I was like, okay, if your current self could talk to your younger self and give yourself some
Right.
advice, what would it be? And one of the things I've heard over and over, and I also agree with, is get help. Don't try to wing it alone, because you don't want to be penny wise and pound foolish, in the sense of I don't want to spend any money. I
Right,
had to. I remember being terrified to spend money. My first expenditure was $999 for this marketing program, and
right,
I remember I was really scared to spend $999. And I thought, well, I'll get my money back. It has a money back guarantee. I'll just check it out and then I'll get my money back. And then I was like, not only
right.
am I not getting my money back, I'm going to buy the guy's next program, which was $2,000. So
Oh
then I
my
was
God.
$3,000 in, and then we took two trips to go to actual live events that, where I learned
Right,
all this. And then by 2019, by going to these marketing programs and investing in myself, and the first one I invested in was $15,000 for a
wow.
year, because I just thought I need somebody to hold my hand and teach me this. And I felt like I had moved to a foreign country and everybody was speaking a language that I did not speak. There were so many
Right,
terms I didn't know. I mean, I was in my 60s, starting out. And so here I am, a
right,
grandma, and I'm starting out. And so that's another thing I would share is, don't let age be an issue. If you're
right,
younger, great, because you've got the mental capacity to make things spin, and you probably have a lot more abilities than I had at the time, even with tech and things like that. But I jumped in, and then about 2 months in, I was crying and saying to my husband, "I'm so sorry. I spent 15,000 of our savings, and I should have never done this. Oh my God, I'm so sorry." And he said, "I believe in you. I think this is really going to pay off. Just I
Mm,
believe in you. This was a good. You're investing in yourself. This is a good investment." And he just really lifted me up and was very supportive. And through that program, I met a guy who was starting his own business, called the Digital Navigator. And this guy, Paul Cousineau, who's from Quebec, Canada,
right,
he said, "I can take all this off your plate," because I had bought all these programs that I didn't know what to do with,
right,
that I was told I needed, Infusionsoft
right.
and Zapier, and all these things.
Yeah,
And
all
I
that
had them
stuff.
all.
Yeah.
I paid for them, and I was like, "Here, I got this plate of all this stuff, but I don't know what to do with it." And he said, "I can take that all off your plate, and and I'll build your website. I'll do all this stuff." And so he actually, oh, I'm so sorry. I forgot to turn off my phone. I apologize. He actually,
You should have had the
I
intuition
know.
to
What
like,
was I thinking?
I mean, somebody might be calling.
Yeah, somebody's gonna call me. Yeah. Anyway, so he really helped, because he got things organized. I already had a website, and
Right,
he's been working with me ever since, and we're redesigning that website right now. But the thing he kept encouraging me to do was, "Lori, you've got to put out something. You've got to put something out big. You've got to launch
right,
something."
right,
So I said, "Okay, I want to launch a free class." And he said, "Well, you could put out like a PDF." And like, "No, I need to launch a free class that teaches people how to do this for free, so they can actually
right,
experience it." So that was a really strong intuition that I had, that it had to be something of true value, not like a freebie,
right.
cheapy freebie thing
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
So I put
yeah.
out a 4-part true class. It's not a sales pitch, it's a real class. I ignored a lot of the advice that was like, the first video should be 80% learning and 20% sales, and the next video should be
Right, 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 right.
40% sales and 60% value. I just ignored all that. I made it all value, except for the very end. At the very end, I say, "Hey, I'm not a salesperson. If this is something you really feel called to do, then you can dive in deeper with my 6-week video course." And I didn't have a
Right.
6-week video course yet.
I love it. I
And
love it,
so I
Lori.
said, "We're going to launch a 6-week video course in 2 months. And if you sign up now, you're going to get a $300 discount." And then I proceeded to scramble and make the video course. And that's still the
Wow.
same video course I'm using. I had hired in the past a bunch of people to film it for me, and none of them ever really came through very well for me.
Mhm.
And so I ended up doing it myself. And it worked great, and it came out really, really authentic. And,
Right,
so
right.
anyway, so that ended up being a really successful 6-figure launch that my
Right.
little free class that I launched that one day that I thought maybe 300 people might come to, ended up we had 4,300 people sign up to attend it.
Wow.
And out of those 4,300, 80% of them actually watched it. And the average is about 15 to 20% will actually watch a
Right.
free thing. So it kind of blew me out of the water. And I was absolutely terrified, Curtis. I was so terrified. I was so scared. And so that's the thing, though, is you've got to sometimes just do it scared. Don't let the fact
Right.
that you're terrified stop you.
Right. I think you mentioned too in the interview, it says don't paint yourself in a corner.
I
You
did. I
know.
mentioned that. So the first thing, if you're starting out, is to get help. The second thing is to do it scared, even if you're terrified. And the third thing would be, as you start really getting going, now that I've been doing this for a while, my advice
Right.
would also be to watch out about painting yourself into a corner, because there were times when I would think, oh my gosh. So let me just explain to you who are listening that from
Right.
2019 till now, I went from just teaching a few students every month to
Right.
now having thousands of students. I now have
Wow.
3 video courses, not including the free one. I have 3 video courses out, and we're about to launch our fourth one. They're 6-week video courses. I also teach regularly 3-day workshops. I'm getting ready to teach one in a couple of weeks. I teach almost every month a 3-day workshop. I have a club, a membership club that's a 5-tier membership club,
Wow.
with hundreds of students. And one of my other students and I run that club. I have 2 full-time people in the Philippines now, customer service. I have a full-time assistant. And we're also getting ready to launch into Latin America. I have published 2 books and I'm working on my third book.
Wow.
And so this is
Wow,
all since
Lord.
2019, right? And I'm not saying
Wow.
this to brag, but I'm saying how explosive a turning point can be, because suddenly things are growing faster than you imagined, and you're suddenly going, whoa, wait a minute, wow, and for
Right.
somebody in
Right.
my 60s, I'm now getting close to 70. It was really like I was going great guns, but then there would be days where I'd suddenly go, wow, I'm tired. I need to retire. I need to retire. And, I would just be exhausted.
Right.
So I've talked to a lot of really successful, well-known names, people that probably a lot of your listeners know of, whose names I won't
Right.
mention, but they're
Right.
really well-known folks who I've gotten to know very well. And some of them are become dear friends. And one thing you've got to keep in mind, even when you're starting out, is what is your succession plan? Because a
Mm.
lot of people they don't want to think about, well, I don't want to think about my business ever closing. I don't want to think about dying. I don't want to think about
Right.
anything, right? But you have to, because none of us knows when when we've chosen to exit this current reality and move on to the next one. And if you want to have a legacy and you don't want all your work just to go down the tubes when you die, then it's really
Right.
important to be thinking about things. So Jim and I spent about 2 years and a few $1,000s setting up a trust for our
Right.
kids, for everything we own, including the business. And as you're going along, I mean, I've been doing this now for almost 30 years. So the amount of material that I have that is copyrighted,
Right.
it's
A lot of
a
intellectual
lot of
property.
intellectual property. So, of course, that was really important to put into the trust. But coming up with a succession plan is difficult, because you've got to
Yes.
have the right person to leave it to, to
Right.
turn it over to. And when you don't have that, and especially if the business is built on your name, and you're the brand, like, Kentucky Fried
Right.
Chicken and Colonel Sanders, when he retired, he still became like the mascot. It's still got his
Right.
image
Right. Right.
everywhere. And he's been dead a long time, but his image is still there everywhere. So you've got to be thinking along those lines as well. When you're starting a business and you've become a CEO, it can be a heavy weight to carry. So I also really advise people to make sure and make self-care a top priority.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
So one other thing I want you to kind of cover too, really quick before we have to close out here, is CEOs utilizing their intuition. Can you share a quick blurb for the audience so they
Yes.
can
Yes.
understand
I,
that?
I really, I think that intuition is a huge, huge game changer and will really get you head and shoulders above your competition when you're able to really access your intuition in a controlled way, like on demand.
Right.
It's so important. We do have that free course that I mentioned. It's
Right.
available now 24/7 because now we have it on an evergreen thing where you can watch it anytime. And it's you just go to intuitivespecialists.com with an S at the end of specialists,
Right.
intuitivespecialists.com. The free class is there. And you can take that free class, and it really does help you understand a ton of stuff. It's really covers most of what I teach on the whole first 8 hours of a 3-day workshop, and it allows
Right.
you to do a remote viewing session. But that ability to really have good gut instinct about what opportunities to take advantage of and which ones you need to avoid, for example,
Right.
huge game changer, right? And so I really do encourage you to develop your intuition. Even if you're kind of like no, I don't believe in that kind of stuff. Believe me, intuition,
Right.
even the most hardcore policemen that I've worked with, and we've done missing person cases. We've worked on kidnappings. We helped an archaeologist who spent 40 years looking for artifacts in a 200 square mile area of ocean. We gave him GPS coordinates and told him what he would find there. And he took divers and boats and found exactly what we said he would find, exactly
Wow.
where we told him he would find it. This is an incredible tool. I have among my students, I have CEOs. The CEO of Sony came and took my course. I have top people who really need this in their lives for corporate strategy. I mean, to
Right.
really strategize and know when to hold them, when to fold them. you
Wow.
know,
That's beautiful.
you've got to kind of know which way to go, and it can be a lonely journey as an entrepreneur and a CEO, especially if you're a solopreneur. So I do encourage you to get help because it'll take a lot off your shoulders, and you don't have to be working on the stuff that you're no good at. I've really learned
Right.
that I've
Right.
got to spend my time working on the things that only I can do and let other people do the things that I'm not that great at, so.
There you go. There you go. So, Laurie, how can they get in touch with? I know you just offered them the free course. Is there any other way they can get in
Yes,
touch with
my
you?
email address is Lori at intuitivespecialists.com. That's the best way to reach me, Lori at intuitivespecialists.com. I'd love to hear from you. And I love the work you're doing, Curtis. I think it's so valuable that you're helping to free folks who have so much potential from anything that's
Yes.
holding them back. I think that that's a wonderful thing, and I'm so glad that I met you. I'm probably I Curtis and I share that we both love hypnosis. I got into hypnosis right after 9/11. I took a hypnosis course, and for 14 years I had a successful hypnosis business in Amarillo, Texas. And I really saw how the value of hypnosis and how it can change lives. And I'm no longer doing hypnosis, but I know that Curtis has a really strong, wonderful program. And I'm like, sign me up, Curtis.
I love it, Laurie. I love it. Laurie, I mean, you've been a joy. So, is it one last thing which you want to leave with the audience? Before we sign off here.
I think that one of the key things that I had to do right away was decide what my corporate culture would be as I was, now
Hmm.
hiring people to work for me and things. And I decided that it had to be love, that love had to be the
Wow.
corporate culture, and that I needed to make love my yardstick by which I would measure everything. Is what I'm doing, is it loving? Is it going to change lives? Is it really going to help people? Because I found that if your focus is money, then for some reason that just never works. Money is never a good priority. Money is necessary, and of course,
It's necessary.
you can't be ashamed of asking for money. And I had to learn to get over any
Right.
money issues I had. But at the same
Right.
time, I found that my first priority always has to be about serving people. And if you give something away of true value, that's really valuable,
Right.
when people do it, when people use it, they go, wow, if they're willing to give away something this valuable, what's their paid stuff like? You know?
Right.
And so I found that was
Beautiful.
really a key thing for me, is to really give people value and always make sure my programs have all developed out of like where's the gaps? What do my students need?
Wow.
So it's an important thing. We now have a 3-year professional certification program, and we've now had our first two graduate groups go through it, where we've had two groups graduate, and we have many more coming up the pike. But all these different programs have all been developed with the students in mind. Like, what do they need, and how can I fill the gaps? So I hope that you're able to serve your people the way Curtis serves his people and serves you, and I hope that I can serve you as well.
Absolutely. Laura, we'd like to, number one, thank you for being such a generous guest. I mean, you shared so much information, so much, guys. You need to click the links below and go to her website and get that free course, and then maybe get a paid course and get everything else that she has. Because personally, I'm going to go and I'm going to take her free course, and maybe we'll meet 101, me and Laura, because because what she does is help people find their true potential. And think about, that's what I do, but I can always learn. That's the part of my mantra: learning, growing, expanding, and transforming. That is the legit
It
mindset.
really is.
So first of all, thank you, Laurie, for being on the show today, and thank you guys for listening or watching, whichever one you're doing, or both. And remember that true success comes from when you do embrace the legit mindset. That is learning, growing, expanding, and transforming. And that's what Laurie did. Think about it, guys. She started this at the age of 60. Um, it's like, come on. I mean, wow. I mean, well, you know what? And it's funny, I'm laughing at Laurie and I'm thinking about myself. I'm like, okay, you know, I've been doing sales and all of this for 55 years. I didn't start this till I was 55 plus. So there you go. So I'm in good company
Yeah.
then. I'm in good company. So once again, Laura, thank you.
Thank you so much
And
for
if
having me.
guys, if this episode resonates with you and you need a breakthrough, or you have a blind spot that's kind of holding you back, please use the link below to kind of schedule your free clarity call with me. Or if you need something a little bit different, contact Laurie. It's fine. I mean, this universe is so big, and we want to help transform lives. Period. That's it. That's all we're looking for. But if you unlock, because we definitely want you to unlock your full potential. I'm Curtis McCullum. Make it a great day, and please don't forget to like and subscribe and share the show.